Are you having trouble paying your bills, Rachel? Did Steven Spielberg not pay you for your role in West Side Story? Did Disney fail to give you a healthy paycheck for, like, Cry Me a River? She's just exactly everything that we can't stand.
Hollywood is quietly turning its back on Rachel Zegler. Just 2 years ago, she was being hailed as Disney's next breakout star. Now, she's been dropped from major projects, reduced to indie roles barely anyone's heard of. And after the catastrophic failure of Snow White, her recent apology to fans didn't repair the damage. It lit a match. Because what she said wasn't just tone-deaf, it may have sealed her fate for good. After months of silence, Rachel Zegler finally addressed the Snow White backlash. But instead of mending fences, she somehow made the situation worse.
Somebody tweeted and said, Rachel Zegler has such an attitude about Snow White as a character, it's genuinely off-putting. Her and Gal Gadot are being such pick-me's over this movie. Like, who's gonna watch it if the protagonist and antagonist are behaving like Mean Girl?
In her so-called apology, she blamed the controversy on what she called a loud, toxic demographic, accusing critics of focusing only on her background. But she never addressed the real issue, her own words. The interviews where she mocked the original film, dismissed Prince Charming as a stalker, and treated the role like a burden instead of an honor. Not a word of reflection on any of that. Then came the contradictions. She claimed that being a strong woman in 2025 means staying silent in the face of hate.
Disney has scrapped plans for a star-studded UK premiere of its live-action Snow White remake, a decision driven by fears of an anti-woke backlash.
And in the same breath, doubled down on everything she said before. No regrets, she insisted, while also saying she was sorry. It didn't add up. It didn't feel genuine. It felt like a lecture. The internet lit up. Fans called it phony. Critics called it performative. And even some defenders couldn't figure out what she was trying to say. The message was muddled, defensive, and ultimately self-sabotaging. Instead of rebuilding her image, the apology just confirmed what many already suspected. Rachel wasn't really sorry, and Hollywood noticed.
But some might say the live-action remake of the 1937 animation has been cursed from the start, when its leading lady criticized the original.
Before the apology disaster, the real turning point came during the Snow White press tour, when Rachel Zegler's own words started turning fans against her. She didn't just promote the film, she tore it apart. In multiple interviews, she mocked the original Snow White, called Prince Charming a stalker, and proudly stated that her version wouldn't be saved by a man. The tone? Smug. Almost like she resented the role she was given. Audiences didn't miss a beat. Clips of her interviews exploded online, spliced into memes, reaction videos, and boycott campaigns.
Because right now there's more dwarves on this podcast than there are in the new Snow White movie. And that's probably due to Peter Dinklage.
Yep.
Even casual fans felt insulted. Parents began saying flat out, "Why take your kids to see a movie that disrespects the classic?" Within days, hashtags like #Not My Snow White were trending. The fan backlash was massive and growing. And Zegler? She didn't walk anything back. She doubled down, setting the stage for the messy apology that followed. But by then, the damage was done, and the audience was already walking away. The fallout from Snow White wasn't just about one actress. It was the final straw in a trend audiences had grown tired of.
Is the main point. We're just trying to represent the values that Snow White is based in, the timeless values that we all loved growing up that are sadly being forgotten in this new adaptation. Weird. Somebody said, who's playing Snow White, Ben or Brett? I can't even tell.
Because this wasn't the first time Disney tried to reinvent a classic, only to insult the very fans who made it iconic. We've seen the same story play out again and again. A beloved property gets remade with a massive budget, a new political spin, and a marketing campaign that talks more about modern values than storytelling. The original audience raises concerns, and instead of listening, the studio doubles down. Then, the film bombs, and they act surprised. The Little Mermaid, The Marvels, Lightyear, now Snow White.
What was it like seeing yourself for the first time in full Snow White drag?
I love that.
They love telling the family,
that when I was 5, I don't recall it. I don't remember any of this.
Each one followed the same pattern: preachy press tours, backlash from longtime fans, underwhelming box office numbers. Meanwhile, movies like the Super Mario Bros. Movie and the Minecraft film thrived by doing the opposite. They focused on fun, nostalgia, and giving the audience what they actually wanted, without lecturing them. The contrast couldn't be clearer. Disney seems to have forgotten what made people fall in love with these stories in the first place. It's not about checking boxes. It's about magic, adventure, and heart. Strip that away, and all you're left with is a hollow remake no one asked for.
Snow White star Rachel Zegler is entering the chat, telling Allure she struggles to meet supportive women in Hollywood. Quote, "All I'm ever really looking for in this business is a sister, and they're not always easy to find."
And for many fans, Snow White was the breaking point. The moment they decided they were done giving Disney the benefit of the doubt. When West Side Story dropped in 2021, Rachel Zegler looked like Hollywood's next breakout star. She had the Disney contract, the award buzz, the press attention, everything. But after a string of box office failures and non-stop controversy, that momentum is gone. Following the backlash from Snow White, major studios started quietly distancing themselves. Roles stopped coming in.
I get stopped for photos every time I'm online for the Snow White ride, and I have to pretend like, oh God, well, crazy that we're in front of this.
Wait, how often are you in line for the Snow White ride?
I'm a narcissist.
And the offers she's getting now? They're a far cry from Disney blockbusters. Her next big project is an indie film with Marissa Tomei. Small budget, limited distribution, and barely a blip on the industry radar. Some insiders estimate the budget is under $4 million. That's the kind of film you release quietly, not the kind you bet a comeback on. And remember, this comes after Shazam, Fury of the Gods, another flop that critics and fans mostly ignored. 3 high-profile projects, 3 box office disappointments, and 1 increasingly controversial public image.
I really do believe in championing your coworkers, whether you're close with them or not.
You know, I really don't remember you being this opinionated.
It's a telling statement given what our source describes as tension between Rachel and her evil.
Studios aren't just turning away because of performance. They're walking because Rachel has become a liability. Too much drama, too much backlash, and not enough return on investment. Hollywood has always been ruthless. They'll forgive almost anything if you're making them money. But combine controversy with commercial failure, that's a fast track to being replaced. Before the backlash, before the boycott, and long before that awkward apology, Rachel Zegler was Disney's golden girl. After West Side Story, the studio fast-tracked her into the spotlight, casting her as the lead in what was supposed to be a bold, modern reimagining of Snow White. She wasn't just playing a princess. She was being positioned as the new face of Disney's next generation. This remake was meant to prove that Disney could evolve. A more independent Snow White. A message-driven story. A fresh voice. Rachel was everywhere. Interviews, red carpets, magazine covers. The studio pushed her hard, betting big on a Gen Z icon who could lead their live-action remake era into the future. But that plan crumbled fast, because the moment Rachel started speaking, the charm wore off. Fans didn't hear confidence. They heard contempt. Her interviews came off less like excitement for the role, and more like disdain for what Snow White originally stood for. That disconnect was instant, and it spread like wildfire online. The same energy that was supposed to launch her career into the stratosphere ended up sinking it. And as the backlash exploded, that carefully crafted Disney image, it shattered almost overnight. Rachel Zegler's collapse didn't happen in a vacuum. If anything, she's just the latest face of a much bigger problem, one Disney keeps repeating like clockwork.
Rachel Zegler just had one of the most disliked trailers in history with Snow White, but now after all the controversy, she's come out slamming Gal Gadot. Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler first met doing the movie Shazam 2 together, which was a massive flop, making only $134 million on a budget of $125 million, meaning it had $150 million in losses.
We've seen it before. A beloved classic gets a live-action remake, the studio leans into political messaging, and the lead actor gives interviews that insult the original fans. Then, the backlash hits. The film underperforms. And instead of learning from the mistake, Disney blames the audience. The Little Mermaid, Lightyear, The Marvels all followed the same path. Expensive productions, endless press cycles focused on how different or modern the remake would be, and a steady drip of PR disasters. When audiences pushed back, they were labeled as outdated, bigoted, or simply too stupid to get it. It's a cycle that feels almost deliberate now. Reframe a legacy story, stir controversy, then blame the audience when it flops. The end result? Huge financial losses and stars like Rachel left to carry the fallout. Meanwhile, the executives behind these decisions somehow keep their jobs. They move on to the next remake, the next casting gamble, the next press tour, filled with buzzwords and forced talking points. It's not just Rachel who's paying the price. It's the fans, the brand, and the stories that used to mean something. Hollywood doesn't care about outrage. It doesn't care about controversy. It only cares about one thing: results. And when the numbers don't add up, the industry cuts ties fast. That's exactly what's happening with Rachel Zegler. She was a rising star, until she wasn't. Now, she's being quietly pushed out. Not because of her opinions, not even because of her attitude, but because the drama didn't come with a box office win. If Snow White had been a billion-dollar hit, the industry would have overlooked everything. But controversy plus failure?
Then after that, it was announced they'd be starring in Snow White, which got a lot of controversy because Snow White is set in Germany while Rachel Zegler is half Colombian and Gal Gadot is Israeli. On top of that, Rachel Zegler isn't the best PR person, where she revealed she only watched the original movie once as a kid and also thought the prince was a creep.
That's a death sentence in Hollywood. Studios are risk-averse. They won't keep betting on someone who turns every press tour into a firestorm and every movie into a public referendum. Rachel became a liability. And liabilities don't get second chances unless there's a guaranteed payoff. That's why she's been bumped down to small indie projects. That's why her name vanished from blockbuster casting shortlists. And that's why Disney, once her biggest supporter, is nowhere to be found now that things have gone quiet. It's brutal, but it's the Hollywood way. And once the machine decides you're no longer useful, it moves on, fast. The fall of Snow White isn't just a career misstep for Rachel Zegler. It's a symbol of how disconnected Hollywood has become from the audiences it once understood. This wasn't just any film. Snow White was the foundation of Disney's empire, the very first animated feature, a cultural landmark. But instead of honoring that legacy, the remake seemed almost ashamed of it. From the casting choices to the rewritten storyline, to the dismissive tone of every press interview, the message was clear. The old version doesn't matter anymore. And audiences felt that, deeply. People didn't boycott this movie because they were afraid of change. They stayed away because they felt insulted. They felt like the film, and the people behind it, looked down on them for loving the original. That kind of contempt isn't just off-putting. It's personal, especially when it's aimed at stories they grew up with. This wasn't an isolated failure. It was the moment audiences realized that Disney no longer respects its own roots. And when the magic is gone, it's hard to get it back. Rachel's performance may have been the final blow, but the real damage came from the top down. From studios that thought they could rewrite beloved stories without understanding what made them special in the first place.
I just love how Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot are sabotaging Snow White before it even comes out. Somebody else said, I have no idea who the f Rachel Zegler is, but now I don't like her because of the way she talks about Snow White. LMF. I just still cannot get over Rachel Zegler's tone in all of these videos, the smugness, and that has been a huge part of the conversation online.
And now, the trust is broken. Rachel Zegler's fall from grace isn't just about one actress saying the wrong things. It's a reflection of something much bigger. An industry that keeps forgetting who its audience is, and a studio that keeps burning its own legacy to chase fleeting headlines. Disney wanted to reinvent Snow White for a new era, but in the process, they lost sight of what made it timeless. They handed the spotlight to someone who didn't respect the role, surrounded her with a creative team that treated the original as outdated and expected audiences to just accept it. They didn't. Now, Zegler is facing the harsh reality of Hollywood's cold logic. The fans have walked away, the studios are moving on, and the apology came far too late. The real question isn't whether Rachel can come back. It's whether Disney can learn from this, whether they can reconnect with the millions of families who once saw the Disney name as a promise of magic, not a lecture. Because if they don't, Snow White won't be the last fairy tale that crashes and burns. Don't forget to like and subscribe.